Welcome back to Cars on Call. I'm automotive journalist Steve Schutz. We have been on a hiatus, but we are back. We decided we have enough to talk about, and it's been long enough of a little bit of a break. Automotive collector, connoisseur, consultant Adams Hudson is here with his new car. He'll talk about that. And of course, we have safety guru, trauma surgeon, Stephan Moran. Stephan, we missed you.
Hey, what do you mean? That's right. I guess the last episode you guys did without me, but I've been gone a long time, a lot of traveling.
We did about 7 episodes without you.
7. I did one. I did one. You and I did one without Steve-O. We did the Cobra episode. We still got to do part 2 and 3.
Yeah, we've been two-timing, sort of dating in the background.
That's right.
Yeah,
but you guys, I mean, everybody's gone on some vacations, holidays, and we decided as gray-haired old men, we kind of deserved a break from 2 years of not missing a single week.
Yeah, it is amazing. We had a lot of fun. Yeah. But once it gets to the point where you're starting like, oh crap, we got to do another one, and it becomes a hardship, it's supposed to be fun. So we took a little break, but we are definitely back. And guys, we got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about a crash. We're going to talk about Adam's new car. We're going to talk Mustang. We're going to talk what else? We got a bunch of stuff. So we'll get to it. And oh yeah, really, really expensive car up for auction. There's a lot of stuff we're going to talk about. Listen, I have been dying to talk about this ever since this happened. And this is a car crash. And we talked about car crashes before, but this one is different. And it's near and dear to my heart. I have a second home in Sun Valley, Idaho, and they have a very unique race there. It happens, again, for about 8 years. It happens every summer for a weekend, either 2 or 3 days of driving. But this is different from any other race you guys have heard about. And it's, again, for listeners too. Basically, there is a long straightaway north of town, and it's about 2 miles. There's really no trees. There's nothing around it, just brush. And
brush is going to be important later.
Yeah, it is. And Stephan's driven on it, I've driven on it, and it just begs. It's a slight downhill, and it begs for you to drive fast. And
we may have gone a little fast on that road.
Yeah, you did 140 in my E92 BMW M3. I've done about the same speed in the same car. But what this organizer decided was, hey, we can turn this into a race. So it's not a race against anybody. It's a race against the clock. You have to apply. It's called the Sun Valley Tour de Force. They will not let you in unless your car can go 200 miles an hour. And they shut the road, and maybe 5 cars will go one by one, and then they'll open the road so cars can go through. It's sanctioned by the police. This is an official race. They have wonderful cars. This year it's sponsored by McLaren. It's been sponsored by Bugatti in the past. The fastest a road car has gone in this race was a Bugatti Veyron. It went 246 miles an hour. Again, this is a road. This is a road that people drive on. So here's what happened. This year, a guy I have met, he lives in Eagle, Idaho. He has a 991.2 911 Turbo S cabriolet, and he was driving with his nephew. His nephew is around 22 years old. He's around 55. He's done this race numerous times before, but he crashed 205 miles an hour, went off the road, end over end over end over end. The engine ended up about 100 yards away from the car. Severe injuries. All I know for sure is that the nephew they're both alive, but the nephew, no brain injury. And Stephan, I know you're going to talk about this. No brain injury. He broke both ankles. He broke a femur. He broke 6 ribs and has numerous other superficial soft tissue injuries. But he is alive and gave a Facebook video. I've heard rumors from 2 sources that the driver had a leg amputated, and no word on if there's been a brain injury. Stephan, talk about this.
So listeners, you can take all kind of places have track days. SACA does parking lot races, autocrosses. And if you take your car to a track under a sanctioned event, most everybody requires that you meet certain criteria. And number one criteria is typically that your tires have to have a date code on them. That means they're basically new tires, that they're capable of withstanding the speed. Some sanctioning bodies require roll bars, full roll cages. Interestingly, Porsche lets you bring your cars to the track, but depending on the track, if you've got a convertible without a roll bar, you can't run the event. And
Stefan, I know you have a ton to say, and I'm sitting here. I'm like, if I were a listener to this podcast, I'm out here in listener land. I can't believe any cabriolet of any description minus roll bar would be allowed in any race.
Amen.
Parking
Amen.
lot race in front of the dang, J.C. Penney on a Sunday. I cannot believe they would allow that. So with that being said, the criterion disincluding the cabriolet is shocking.
well, certain, I'm not going to get into details of the SCCA categories, but basically certain cars that have the pop-up roll bars will qualify because of the pop-up roll bars depending upon the track. But, so the idea of you're taking your vehicle out and you're going as fast as you can. Number one, this just was I don't know what the fuck this guy was thinking. A cabriolet, first of all. Okay, a cabriolet. A convertible. And having your nephew in it, where you're going for top end. Let me tell you what, when shit goes wrong and you're going that kind of speed, you don't have time. So first of all, the fact that this guy took this cabriolet, and it was a highly modified cabriolet to go faster. Second thing, he had his nephew in it. He's got 3-point belts. Doesn't have full restraints in it. He just got the regular factory 3-point belts. First of all, that makes no sense to me. That you're going to be for these top end speeds. And I feel sorry for the nephew. I feel sorry for both. It's just a terrible situation. It all seems fun and great, top speed, but here you're not on a track. You're on a road. There's imperfections in the road, and we'll show some pictures here. But yeah, number one, a cabriolet. Number two, he has factory seat belts in it. Number three, they talk about maybe he had a blowout, hit a pothole. I'm not quite sure what knows. We'll never really know. The fortunate thing we've talked about in crashes.
Let me just add really quickly. I drove up there today because I'm in Sun Valley.
You want to look at the pictures?
Well, no, I just want to insert very quickly. There's no pothole. I can say that. There's no pothole. He didn't hit a pothole.
Right. So, was my train of thought. So the way you can survive a crash is very easy. You can go to YouTube and watch a skydiver who dives without a parachute and lands in cardboard boxes. So it's all about how long it takes you to go from 200 to 0. Okay. And Steve, you talked about some race driver famous quote about that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's all about how fast you stop. It's not about how fast you're going. You're
thinking about Jeremy Clarkson saying it's not about how fast you go, it's how quickly you come to stop.
Exactly right. Yeah. So this guy was very fortunate in this crash that he went off the road. Number one, no guardrail. They'd been dead if there had been guardrails. He went through the brush, and the brush basically allowed him to tumble through the brush, slowly decelerating. That's a lot of energy dissipation. The vehicle, the energy came out of the car. So momentum equals mass times velocity. Kinetic energy is 1/2 mv squared. So this guy had a very long time to crash, which was actually fortunate for them. And some very interesting things about the crash. Let's just let me pull up these pictures here because it's really interesting to kind of look at this. So this is Steve-O's 911. And looking out the hood, and there you can start to see, I'm going to put my mark, you can see the skid marks going off the road.
I'm having a hard time taking my eyes off the Oslo blue, but yes, those are so is this the very end of the top speed run?
This is the bottom of the hotel. This is the bottom of the hill. So go ahead, Stefan, and forward a couple pictures where I'm looking uphill.
There you go.
That's it. So that is about 2 miles. It's completely straight, just absolutely straight. You start at the top of the hill. You actually start at the end of the horizon there where the road kind of ends. It actually goes right, like a 30 degrees right, and follows the contour of the mountains behind it. So you get up to probably 120, 130 miles an hour, and you make a very slight left-hand turn, and then you're looking down this hill, and getting to around 200 miles is easy. So he probably halfway down the hill would have gotten to 200 miles an hour. And if you listen to the video, it's a pretty steady throttle. So he's going 200, 205 miles an hour all the way until that black skid mark, which you see in the foreground. That's the end of the run. He basically made it to the end.
Oh, wow. And, viewers, if you're looking at this thing, and I don't know what your screen is doing, but parallel lines indicate everybody's going straight. When they start to drift from each other and they're not parallel, somebody is in the start of a spin, which is apparently what's going on here.
So here's interesting. You see here
That's a good
front
point,
tire
Adams.
marks. You see, these are his front tire marks right here. See these?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And then these are his rear
gotcha.
tire marks. So he did not have the tires locked up. He was basically he was drifting sideways. He lost control. Either aero, the rear end got loose, and he is going sideways at this point. And this is not full on brakes coming to a skid. This is a car sliding sideways at 200 miles an hour, which is really interesting. And then here you can see the path of him going into this thick brush on the side. And
yeah, what Stephan is outlining there is exactly where this car went. You can see a dent in the right there. You can see a dent. Yep.
So you can imagine that actually going off the road.
And by the way, just to point out, this is the first dent. There's many dents that go probably 100 yards down the road, maybe 75 yards down the road.
So all this
alongside the road.
Yep, all this thick brush is catching him, acting like a safety net, a natural safety net. And then here's another view of that. So here's a picture of the car, and there's several interesting things that we can look at this car. Number one, you'll notice there's no airbag deployment. Front airbags did not deploy.
Oh.
Yep, no airbag deployment.
Zero passenger.
Didn't think of that.
Or driver.
And if you look at the driver's seat, the driver's seat is not deformed, still upright. But if you look at the passenger seat, his seat is reclined. So that means that, clearly, I can't imagine he had a seat in this position while he was riding in the car. So clearly during the impact, he hit and was moved back in the seat, deforming the seat. If you look at the A-pillar here on the passenger side, it's still fairly upright, but look at the driver's side A-pillar. It is completely bent the opposite direction. And then here are the pop-up roll bars right here that are on the cabriolet.
Wait, are those roll bars? Oh, are they?
Those are pop-up.
When I first saw that photo, I swear I thought they were windscreens. Those are roll bars.
Those are the pop-up roll bar. That's on the 911, and lots of manufacturers. Mercedes has them, and they're basically pyrotechnic. When it reaches a certain vertical impact force, it fires these roll bars vertically. So what's interesting is they tell you when you track one of these cars as a convertible, you need to make sure that you have your top down, because you can if you come over a hill or hit a bump or go over a corner hard enough, you will fire these off, and then not only do you have to replace the pyrotechnics, you got to replace your top on your vehicle. So this is a Porsche at a track day where the pop-up roll bar is deployed in a track day and went up through. So to
losing the rear glass was the least of their problems.
Yeah. But when they went off, they had the top down. If I recall, I saw pictures of them driving off. They did not have.
Well, you can tell that there's grass up under the cabriolet top bow that would have originally joined that A-pillar that used to be there.
Yes. So it really is amazing that they survived. It is a testimony to the Porsche that it remained pretty well intact. But really, here you can see the brush, and the reason they survived this crash is because they went through this brush. Any other mechanism of injury without this brush, I don't know how they could have survived. Interesting to see that they had a lot of, Stephen mentioned front leg injuries. If you look, the right front tire is not too far into the passenger compartment. It's basically up against the fender. So I'm not sure what intruded into the passenger compartment to cause the fractures. That'd be interesting. But, at 200 miles an hour, they're flailing around there like rag dolls.
Hey, let me ask you a question, Stephan.
Yeah.
Because, my feeling is, you get into a car accident, you go off the road at 100 miles an hour. That's serious. I think it's safe to say you get into you do this at 200 miles an hour, you're not walking away from that car. And they had to send 2 helicopters for these guys. I think that's going to be norm for 200 miles an hour. But here's my question. Elisa, my wife, had a good point, and I'll just ask you about it. I'm certainly nervous about the driver and head injury because this is the classic situation where you'd have a head injury. And we know that the nephew does not have a head injury. He had severe leg injuries. I mean, 2 broken ankles. I think number one, he's extremely fortunate to be alive, and I'm sure he feels blessed and grateful. But we know because we're older, and he will learn. Boy, is he going to have some arthritis when he's 40, maybe a little earlier. That's the one observation. But my question is this, and this is a point that Elisa made: is it possible that? And I'm going to go with the assumption that the driver has a head injury because I think he does. I have not heard a single thing. His family posted something on Facebook. One of my nurses actually went to high school with one of the daughters of the driver. And she put up something the day after saying my dad was in a serious car wreck. And there's been no word since then. That tells me he probably has a head injury. It's a guess, but I think it's an educated guess. But here's the question. And again, Elisa thought of this. Is it possible that the driver had a more serious head injury or more serious injuries because he couldn't duck his head down because of the steering wheel while the nephew is able to put his head down? I know they're flopping around all over, but you put your head down between your legs or at least under the dashboard, maybe that protects you from head injury.
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough to say that, but when we did these reconstructions in wrecks at this velocity, you can predict what happens to the individual in the initial impact, and you got an idea how far they come forward in the seatbelt. But with secondary, tertiary, quaternary impacts, which this vehicle had, I think they said it flipped and rolled over 9 times. It's a complete crapshoot. And typically what happens is in these wrecks is you come out from behind your shoulder harness. You're thrown to the side. So you've got a 3-point belt. So now basically your your upper belt is behind you. You remain restrained at the hips. But that's why race car drivers have 6-point belts. I mean, it's designed to keep you in where you are. Whereas these guys, they were clearly outside of their shoulder belts. I mean, so they were flopping around like rag dolls, basically attached at the waist, probably. And the thing to realize is, these vehicles all have pre-tensioners on the seat belts that tighten you up, but then that fires one time. And then with each subsequent impact, there's no pre-tensioner and the belt's going to be stretched out.
So Steph, that's a very good point, and I think sometimes people get lost in sort of the okay, well, I'm putting my belt on. And if in older tech belts, if you pull it too fast, the centrifugal little latch, the mechanical latch would catch the ratchet and you'd like, oh, I can't get it on. And that's on purpose. But when the pyrotechnics fire, what it's trying to do is cinch you into the seat. And you're saying it only does that one time?
Right. It's basically it only fire one time.
And so what happens after that? Does it relax?
What it does is, so the way the seat belts are designed is it fires, which pulls you back into the seat. And then they have load limiters. So as you just hit a brick wall, it's going to slowly let you out to give you more time to slow down. Then the idea is then you hit the airbag. And then, so we call that riding down the restraints. You ride down, the pre-tensioner brings you back into your seat. Boom, you hit something. Now the seatbelt has a load tensioner to slowly let you come forward, because if it pulled tight and stayed completely tight, it'd cut you in half.
Yeah, got you.
It would
break all the bones and organs.
Break all the bones and everything. That's why they have pre-tensioners and load limiters to help with especially chest injury and decelerate.
This sounds like a shameless plug, but is there another dude on any podcast anywhere who knows what he just said?
No.
That's remarkable. No, that's it. Well, so it sounds like the passengers were incredibly fortunate.
The fact that they're alive is unbelievable. And to me, the fact that they were not ejected, 200 miles an hour, flipping 9 times, and basically being held in by a lap belt at this point, perhaps still the shoulder. I mean, it's pretty, and if you look at a couple of other, we'll move on, but I think a couple of other points to show that the reason they probably survived is if you look at this, so in a vehicle, you've got, this is the A pillar, the windshield comes down, then the door comes back, and this would be called the B pillar. Those are convertible. If you look at both B pillars on both sides, they are still intact. So basically, the central monocoque of the Porsche has remained intact, or the passenger cell. And it had to do with the way the car was flipping, that it allowed this basic central portion of the vehicle to remain partially intact, although both doors clearly came off. I mean, I can imagine that the doors unlatched and flew open, because these cars flex and bend when this happens, and the doors will pop open.
Yeah, the video, I don't know if I said this earlier, but the video showed that this car was rolling end over end,
Right.
tumbling. And it's just shocking to me. And the engine was a long distance away from the car. You can see it flying through the air, I can imagine. You can't see it on a video. Hey, before we leave this, Stephan, and Adams is absolutely right. Having a trauma surgeon that's seen so much of this is really unique to our podcast. But here's my question, Stephan. You've talked about this, maybe talk about it again. When you have a head injury, and this is the reason I keep bringing it up, the head injury comes, well, just describe what happens with a head injury. Most people don't realize about the brain and the skull and the helmet. Talk about that.
So, yeah. So, you got your skull, and there's a famous French surgeon by the name of Tessier who defined all of the facial fractures. Basically, it's a terrible experiment, but he smashed bowling balls into chimps' faces and described how they break. And Tessier, and there was four fractures. But what happens is, normally, like, just think if you run into a brick wall and hit face first, the idea is your face is going to collapse to help slow down the impact. And then your forehead strikes the wall, where your brain is inside of your skull. Your brain's going to keep moving forward until your brain strikes the back of the inside of your skull. And then what happens, that's called the coup injury, C-O-U-P. And then what happens is, when you bounce back, the brain then bounces to the back and hits the back of the skull. So that's called the contra coup. So it's like if you're in a car wreck, you have first, the impact of the car, and then you impact the seatbelt, then your chest impacts the steering wheel, then the heart hits the back of your sternum. So that's what brings your brain to a stop. And injuries like this, you can imagine they're flying unprotected. Even though you have a helmet on, your head is still going to strike something, and your helmet's going to come to a stop. Your skull is going to push against the padding. It's eventually going to get past the point of the padding can slow it down, and then your brain hits the inside of your skull. And one thing we know, that our organs are they don't tolerate what we call a rapid deceleration in a short period of time. Think about it. You've got, say, a jar, you can put something in there and just one quick shake and you can mix things up. Or you can shake it slowly, not a lot happens, but it's that same thing, that boom, that quick shake, where you have the rapid change in acceleration, deceleration, that cause these injuries.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Moran. And obviously, we hope and pray that these two will be okay. I have serious doubts about the driver. Adams, there is a car that's coming up for auction, and this is a really interesting car. We talked about something like maybe the more expensive cousin of this car, but this is a very special Mercedes. Go into that, Adams. It's pretty amazing that it's even available for sale.
It is amazing. Absolutely. The whole auction world has been turned on its head a little bit over the last few years. We've got a lot of online auctions. We've got still the highest sales prices, for whatever the popularity of the online auctions are. The highest auctions are the real live auctions, the absolute events, where RM Sotheby's or Gooding or others will put together an event where you can look at the car, you can bring your mechanic, you can bring your museum curator to check the authenticity of the car. And one that's coming up, and Steph, if you want to bring up a graphic, the Indianapolis Museum for the Indy Roadway occasionally gets cars, and there's one earlier than that. If you want to pull up an earlier photo,
the Ford,
there's a few cars that are going to be at this auction. This is an interesting sort of graphic of a Ford GT40 that ran in the 1966 Le Mans.
wow.
Everybody knows what a GT40 looks like, but I sort of liked this particular shot. And then the next one is a 250 LM.
That's
That
it.
one.
That's it.
Yep. Which is also, that's actually, that's the car that won Le Mans
Wow.
in 1965. And so when we watched the movie Ford versus Ferrari, this is the car that put the thorn in the side of Il Duce, Henry Ford II. That's the one that sort of like made him the most irritated, because they had been winning and then they win again with this car, and it sort of put Ford behind a little bit. And so these cars were donated or gifted or in somehow orchestrated to become part of the Indianapolis Motor Museum. Well, a spokesperson for that museum, understandably, they can't have every car that's donated. They can't have every car that's looking for sort of a tax write-off to be part of the world. So they have understandably said, we're only going to take cars that have a real live connection to the Indy 500. And this next car is one that was donated to them. I should have it in my notes, and forgive me for not, but I'm going to say it was in the late 60s. This particular car was donated to them. This is called the Mercedes-Benz W196 Streamliner. And if that is not the sexiest profile you could ever,
that's unbelievable. That car is just, now what year was this car, Adams?
That car, it originally, now this is what's interesting about this car to me, is that, the Streamliner name, of course, is exactly what we think it should be, a streamlined silhouette. This car in 1955 was driven by Juan Manuel Fangio.
So this is one of the 300, this is basically like a 300 SL then of the
Yes, sir.
SLR.
Exactly.
SLR.
Okay.
Yeah.
The SLR.
SLR.
And so in 55, this is what's crazy. That car was an open wheel car.
Wow.
Oh.
So Fangio ran it in a non-sanctioned F1 race without the fenders on it. So underneath all this genius that we're seeing about how wonderful it looks and how competitive it is and how obviously way ahead of the competition, imagine that car without fenders just sitting there open wheel. Well, that's the one that Fangio drove in 54. And then in 55, they put those Streamliner fenders on it. And you can see what's crazy. You see those little side exhausts. That's what we look back. Thank you for that little cursor. That's what we look back at the 300 SLR or the McLaren SLR. That side exhaust, this is where that idea was birthed. When they said, oh, we need to make the side exhaust, that's where this came from. So that particular car, Mercedes,
like the Ford Cobra Daytona.
There you go. Exactly.
Yep, same. Got that exhaust just like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Pete Brock, to make a minor deviation, knew his history so much better than anybody ever gives him credit for. He knew every aerodynamicist, every chassis designer, every person who had ever made a winning car. He knew that exhaust came from this car, which actually helped the slipstream, which is another topic. So
Wow. Adams, let me ask you two things. Well,
I'm sorry, I'm getting all frothy. So
no, this is unbelievable. Yeah. I can't believe this car's going to auction.
I would say two things. Number one, this is 1955, and Mercedes basically dumped all their racing cars because of the terrible crash at Le Mans that killed 85 spectators.
Yes.
And they just basically shut down their racing. So they had a bunch of these cars they were supposed to race, and they either sold them or put them away. That's why the 55 is a significant year. And number two, wouldn't you be angry if you were the grandson of the donor? Because he donated the car.
No kidding. And Steve, that is such a great point, because that is a historical context for why this was the last Streamliner Mercedes ever built.
Right.
That is a great context. And anybody wants to look that up, that's a whole nother topic, and actually almost worthy of a movie, the 1955 problem that Mercedes had. And they wanted to prove to the world that they had a heart. They were sorry to see that they were, racing standards were not what they should have been as far as safety. And then they have this car go airborne. So this car is one of 14 W196s that was ever made. 6 of them are owned by the museum.
By the way, they had to say they had a heart, right? I mean, just 10 years earlier, they were killing the French on purpose.
Oh,
and then they come back and kill them by accident.
Yeah.
Oh.
I wasn't gonna bring that up, but since you did,
It's true.
No, that is true. So
Yeah,
we could have a moment of silence. Boy, you connect this with the first story we had, and this is the episode of death. Lord. So there were of the 14 made, 10 actually still remain, because race cars have, a low survivability, of course, but the company owns 6. So that leaves only 4 total cars. 3 of those cars had lived in museums. One was sold privately in 2013 or 14. Yeah, about 10 years ago. Yeah, in 2013. And that car sold for $29,300,000, which put it like number 8 on the most expensive cars ever sold at auction. This car now coming out of what everybody would consider a museum collection, undriven, since donated, other than started and sort of kept with its fluids intact and everything it ever needed, but without an Indianapolis connection, is going to be sold at the Indy sale. They're putting 11 cars in this auction, inclusive of the 2 that we showed just prior to this, and they estimate its value now at $50 to $70 million.
wow.
Comment, boys and girls.
Well, you think it'll go more. This is the Elanite coupe, or is this another one?
Yeah, that's the one that would
Okay.
be the one that would eclipse the price of this.
Yeah, I think
And that went for 140 million.
Correct. That is the number 1 most expensive car ever sold at auction, ever.
And one of the most beautiful cars ever. That car is just spectacular.
But look at the similarities.
Oh yeah, let's see all the SLRs. I mean, they were phenomenal. I mean, Mercedes was so ahead of the game at the time in their race cars, and then these cars, spectacular. I think it's exciting.
Stefan, we made this point when we talked about the Uhlenhaut, the $140 million, that car. When this sold at auction, and Jeff Bank, a friend of the show, one of my partners, sent me an article by Simon Kidston. And Simon Kidston is a well-known collector, connoisseur, consultant, man. He's like, he's the one, right, Adams?
Yes, he is.
He had a blank check. So he went to the auction at Mercedes, and he describes how secretive it was. And he walks into the room, and he said, his friend who said, buy the car, he said, how much? And his friend said, whatever it takes. And he just kept going until he got the car. Here's my point. And I made this point when we talked about this, Stefan, earlier, and Adams, you can weigh in on this. These are no longer cars. These are works of art. This is like a Picasso or a Renoir. This is no longer a transportation device. This is, again, a sculpture.
Absolutely true. I don't know when that transitioned from, oh, it's a cool car, you can take it for drives, you can enjoy it as an automobile, to it becoming the Rembrandt, like you said. These are 100% in the realm of all the sculptures you would ever see in your life, and say that is a world-class grandmaster sculpture. I mean, that's a Bernini right there with tires on it.
When I went to the Mercedes Museum and saw the SLR and the ones that Fangio drove, I mean, I was just, I'm a car guy. I love cars, but I see a lot of cars. Like, yeah, nice car, but these cars are transcendent in their design, and these cars will be as cool today as they were in 55, and they'll be this cool in 2055, 2075. It's just a transcendent design that will always be appreciated.
And Adams, I've been thinking this, and I completely agree with Stefan. And here's my question: let's say it goes for $70 million. Do you think there's any chance the person that buys it loses money on that car if he sells it in 20 years or 10?
Of course, that is looking into the automotive crystal ball. I want to support the answer to say, no, there's no chance he loses money. And why? Because that means that the enthusiasm's there. And if the enthusiasm's there, it means that our generation is not the one that's paying the additional premium. It means that people who are behind us in the wake of our generation still appreciate beauty and art. And at the point that a society or civilization says that we don't appreciate beauty and art, I think is a slight death knell for that civilization.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what it shows. We'll have an update, I'm sure. And let's move on to your new car. You had a NART blue, racing blue Ferrari 360, and had a gated 6-speed. It was a wonderful car. It lasted a lot longer than your S2000. But it also,
so did you
it
sell
also-
your Gucci shoes and your gold necklace with the car?
they're in the
Well,
trunk.
they were an integral part of that car. So yes, I glued the shoes to the pedals. No, I enjoyed that car. I had a good time in that car. And Steph actually predicted the S2000. If you remember when I first got it, he goes, "I give that car 6 months."
Right.
And I think it lasted 5.5. So anyway, this particular car behind me, as one can see, is not a Ferrari, but I sold / traded the Ferrari to a friend of mine. That car is currently in Amelia Island, Florida, with a guy who absolutely deserves it. And I was looking for a car I could put on the road a little bit more. And the one that's showing up on the screen is what Porsche called the 911-50. So if you want to be cool about it, you call it the -50. And you can look at it and see a lot of retro cues, most notably the big fat Fuchs sitting in that wheel well. But I just wanted to, I wish I could show the Fuchs. I'm not sure that I actually can.
Well, Stefan has a picture.
Am I able to show that?
There you
there
go.
it is.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
See,
he's got a
let
picture
Let
up
me
too.
stop the share there so you can. There we go. So now you're up.
You know, there's a lot of, a lot of people overdo and actually abuse the whole retro cue thing. Well, that's that's a design cue from previous. So the 911-50 is attempting to allude to the fact that there have now been 50 years of 911s. And so they made 1,963 of these for the public. And everybody out there is going, wait, it came out in 64. What's the problem? The Porsche Museum kept the first one. So you could buy this car and
Show that Mustang 50 badge on the back. That's what I really like.
yeah,
Yeah, that's funny.
there you go.
There
Mustang-
it is. The Mustang 50 badge on the back.
And
Yeah,
to-
not
and
many
to be
people know
fair-
this car came
and to
with a
be-
Ford V8. That's
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
And Adams, to be fair, the reason it's 1963 is the 911 was introduced actually as the 901, but the 911 car was introduced to the world at the 1963 Frankfurt Auto Show. That's why that was the launch. It didn't sell till the next year, but that was the launch date.
Yeah, as usual, Steve is dead on. That's exactly correct. But the 64, of course, would be the production year.
Right.
And that's why, the one stayed with the museum. So yes, you were correct on both counts. And you've got this is chrome. You would not see that on the normal one. And then the 50, the Mustang 50, not many people know that it had the Mustang 50 in it, which is crazy.
I'm never going to look at that the same.
Well,
I thought maybe you bought a Porsche and threw a 5-liter Mustang engine in the back of it. Did a retro rod or something.
Well, not only did you turn that into the Ford 50, the first time I sent it to you, you said, "Why does it say so on the back?"
Oh, that's funny.
And the other little part, and we don't have to do a tour of the whole car, but is the houndstooth interior. And that is another retro sort of thing that they did. These are the 18-way sports seats as opposed to the 14-way, which makes a difference because you get the little shoulder sort of bump out thing here. It has green gauges. You can see the PDK in there. And I guess overall, what Porsche was doing, and they have done it before, and they have done it terribly before, as you get a close-up of my neck. What Porsche has done terribly before is they have made bad anniversary cars. Let's just be honest. I'm going to say, as you might imagine, I'm a little biased. This is a good anniversary car. They're all numbered. They have very unique options. Most notably among the things they came with are the turbo body, turbo suspension, turbo brakes, but 2-wheel drive. So a sporting enthusiast who does not like the 4-wheel drive, forgive me for all the very esoteric reasons they would not, this is like a C2S with a GTS motor. And you go, wait, what do you mean GTS motor? Well, it has the built-in X51 package, adds
Right.
30 horsepower. So you get a 2-wheel drive with some fun options to add, some retro cues, and 30 more horsepower. And it's a numbered car. About 700 of them came to the US. There's all sorts of debates on how many had PDK, 70% or something, 80, I don't know, a lot. And the Geyser Gray, they made 3 colors: Geyser Gray, Graphite Gray, which is a darker, sort of good-looking, non-metallic gray, and then black. Not the most exciting color palette, to be completely honest. There's the Geyser right there. Excuse me, the Graphite. And it's toward the end of the naturally aspirated cars before they twin turboed them all. And I thought it sort of stood on its own. So there it is.
Yeah, I think it's a great car. It's beautiful. The interior especially is absolutely beautiful. And the 40th anniversary is in 996. They made a lot more of them, and there's nothing really special about it.
Nothing.
And
Silver, yeah.
And the 30th, I don't even know, I don't know what the hell they did with the 30th, but not much.
I kind of don't either. They made a pink one or a purplish one, and I don't really know what else it did.
Yeah. All right, switching gears, I want to get Stephan riled up. And I saw this topic, not by myself. My son Patrick, who is a good friend of the show, emailed me and said that Rivian and presumably soon other manufacturers are going to start charging subscription fees. But Stephan, this is a subscription fee when you already have a subscription.
Yeah, this is, I think it's just inevitable. I mean, we pay for HBO Max, we pay Amazon.
You sound remarkably
Prime,
passive. This is a red button for you, Stephan.
I would be really pissed because so Rivian is joining Tesla and Toyota in charging you to use the apps on your phone. So you already have Spotify on your phone. You've got all those other apps on you could have Amazon Music, you could have Apple Music, you've got Waze on your phone. Well, they're going to start charging you basically to use those apps on your phone, but you're not using them on your phone. You're using the ones you have on your phone. You're using the Rivian's version of that because you can't connect your iPhone to the Rivian and the Tesla,
right,
which would really piss me off. So it's going to be, it's $14.99 a month. And here's what they had in their public release. Thanks to Rivian's fully integrated software platform, Connect Plus offers seamless access to enhanced connectivity features and a host of new apps in your R1. Well, first of all, my phone does all that. Okay. I plug my phone in CarPlay and I have all that I need. I don't need any more. And they said, well, there's a significant collaboration between the teams at Apple and Rivian. So you get more features if you use Apple Music through Rivian rather than Apple Music on your phone. I don't give a shit. I hit my playlist and I go. Oh, well, you get in-vehicle hotspots. Yeah, that's just what I want everybody in my car hotspotting, and instead of playing the license tag game or actually talking to each other. You get satellite images. Why do I need a satellite image in a car? I don't understand that. Oh, it's Alexa connected straight. I don't need that. And coming in the future, Google Cast and YouTube. I don't know if I need those. So, once again, it's inevitable. We can't get away from it. Everything is now subscription. My financial software on my computer, the software that runs my X-Carve machine up at the shop is monthly subscription based. Everybody's jumping in, but I'm like, I really don't want to have to pay for anything if I can just plug my phone in and go. I like my phone.
Here's the point. And Patrick made this point when he sent me this information. It's great. It's amazing to have a Wi-Fi hotspot in your car if your phone has no other way to connect to the internet. But it does. It's called 5G. You have full access to the internet. They're acting like this is amazing. Oh my gosh, you can connect your phone to the internet.
Yeah,
it's
because your car has an AT&T chip that you have to pay extra to get access for your car to the internet. So it's like paying for having another phone. No, thank you.
This is taking a page out of the Porsche marketing book. Re- remove items and charge more.
More. Yes.
But it's crazy.
Right.
I tell you the word that I dislike so much about when you're reading that description about what you're getting with this is access to. You
Yes.
already know when somebody says access to that you got to pay to go over the bridge. And it's just absurd that you've already paid to go over the bridge and now you went back over and you have to pay again. I read something online recently and it made me think of this, that it said, of course, the Gen Xers are furious. They had to trade in their vinyl albums for cassettes and they had to trade in their cassettes for CDs. Then they
Right.
traded in their CDs for MP3s. And now they have to trade those in for music subscriptions. And now they have to trade those in for car subscriptions to the music they already had subscriptions to.
Two. Yes.
It's ridiculous.
Exactly. It is ridiculous. So you're paying twice for the music now.
Yeah.
All
You'll
right,
be paying Spotify and then you'll be paying Rivian to use your Spotify.
And if I can go ahead and throw in, because I can hear Steve wanting to change topics. Apple Music is as culpable as is Rivian.
Yeah.
They should have never shook hands on it.
Yeah. Anyway, we're all outraged and disgusted, and
Yes.
go to hell, Rivian.
And they
Speaking of
may
go to-
anyway.
Speaking of go to hell, Stefan is talking about these new Mustangs. Is this sacrilege or is it worse?
Well, it just, we've
I
crossed
like
this
how you only
subject.
give him those two choices. That's all there is.
So, in the news,
It
listeners,
can't be good.
Jim Farley and Bill Ford met with a bunch of their national network of dealers, and they're talking about, the future hot topics, some Ford execs, and they actually unveiled some full-size mock-ups and some concept renderings of a sedan version of the Mustang four-door,
Oh.
as well as a all-wheel drive off-road trim, a la, Porsche Safari. What is it? Lamborghini Sterato. So it's all the craze right now. Everybody wants to have a Safari version of their sports car. So they're going to call this sedan. They did release the name. It's going to be called the Mach 4. Go Speed Racer Go. But no name for this Safari version. It does irritate the hell out of me that they're going to. And here's a rendering of what it's probably going to look very close to. It just looks like a Mustang with two extra doors. I think clearly what Ford has done is they realize with the Mustang Mach-E that I think they're moving Mustang towards a brand of its own. So you'll have, the Mustang, you have the Mach-E, the electric version, the two-door sports car version, the four-door version, the Safari all-wheel drive version. And so Mustang as a brand, and clearly they did their research and showed that, they pissed off all the old gray-haired men and women of baby boomers about the blasphemy with the Mustang name. But Ford has gone on with this. They did it with the Capri. So in Europe, listeners, the Ford Capri was a tiny two-door car. They did bring it to America, a great little two-door sports car. And they did a four-door EV and they call it the Capri. But I'm just going to say, yes, it irritates the hell out of me, but before you guys beat on Ford, I'm going to throw a beat down on you. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Whoa.
Your car there in the background, your manufacturer slaps the word turbo on vehicles that don't even have a damn turbo. And they don't put a turbo badge on their 911s that do have a turbo. So Porsche has done kind of the same with the turbo name, the turbo brand.
When did this turn into an us versus them?
Well, I got two Porsche owners sitting across from me and on Zoom. So yeah, it irritates me, but I think just as Porsche saw with the turbo moniker, the brand of turbo, that they can slap it on their Taycan, all electric vehicle. And then even the ones that don't have it, they don't put it on there, but they save it for the ones that have a lot more power. But I see what Ford's doing with it, and whatever they can do to increase sales, I see it. I don't think there's any room. I mean, four-door sedans are just going away. There's so few four-door sedans besides the Altima, which is still being sold,
I have a couple thoughts, and Stefan, I agree. This is going to be a sub rant. I actually don't have a problem with it. I think it's pretty cool to have that Mustang sedan. To me, it reminds me of not so much Porsche, but Audi. Audi had an A5 and then they made an A5 Sportback and the Sportback. And now the A5 Coupe is going away because people don't want a coupe. And the A5 S5 and RS5 survive. A very good looking car. I have no problem with it. You want to do that with a Mustang? I have no problem with it.
It's their Panamera.
Yeah, and Corvette is going to do the same thing. So I think Mustang's probably going to beat them to the punch here. But unfortunately, Mustang already dirtied themselves by having the Mustang Mach-E, which is way worse than a sedan and way worse even should there be a Mustang Macan? Yeah, a Mustang Cayenne. I have no problem with that. It's just a stupid Mach-E that bothers me.
Yeah, the Mach-E should have been the Galaxy.
Yeah.
A treasured name in Ford history, and Galaxy goes well with an EV to me. And I think, that makes more sense in bringing back Capri with an EV, the Mach-E with an EV, or just let them maybe as the Mach-E, but not the Mustang Mach-E. I don't know.
I don't even know why there's so much focus on why it needs to even be named a Mustang. I mean, what is the point of continuing this Mustang moniker? Why can't it live on it in its own sort of hallowed and revered history? Why can it not just be a Mustang? Why can't this particular car that we're looking at, of course, Mustang front end, Mustang rear end, completely different sort of passenger cage in the middle? Why can't it be a different name?
Cougar, Tempest?
Say that again?
Cougar or Tempest?
Yeah. Well, I mean, just for the fact, I mean, look, we all agree that they sold the name with the Mach-E.
Yes.
Why would they re-enter those waters and continue this self-flagellation of ruining a good name with another poke at, oh, we can change it and still call it that. And for about 30 minutes, the buying public will be stupid enough to think it's still a Mustang. I don't like it. So let me go on record as being the opposition. Just call it something else.
If it is a 5-liter, you get it with a manual, or even if you can, if it's a V8, and I like the front end of that sedan. If it's a real muscle car, just like I said, the RS5 or the A5 Sportback, I actually am okay with it. I guess a better analogy would be, what if they made a 4-door 911? Forget about the Panamera, but they called it a 911, but it's 4-door. And I think Porsche wouldn't do that. And Porsche did call it. They have a 4-door sedan, and but they call it a different name. I guess I'm on the fence, Adams. You have a good point. Why not call it something else? And Stefan's idea of a Cougar or something like that. I guess I'm on the fence. Corvette's going to do it. I think Mustang kind of has to. I don't know.
Let's look at the 4-door Corvette to see if we can sway you over to the correct side. There you go.
Oh my gosh.
Now that thing's a looker. If you double dating at the disco, that's what you want to take. Let's look at another 4-door Porsche made actually by Porsche. Give that thing a click. Oh yeah. Wait.
No,
Wait,
here's the 4-door Porsche.
Yeah.
4-door 911.
4-door 911.
I don't know. It's like
was this for Pieck and his 12 kids of 8 different wives to carry them around in this thing? Is this the Pieck Papa Mobile?
I'm gonna just be outraged there. They were only 4 different women, I think. But he's not quite
Yeah,
NBA
but they were
material.
sisters. Does that soil?
What was his I think his brother's wife or his cousin's wife, anyway. Yeah, they proposed a 911 sedan, and they very cleverly, or the right decision was to not do it, and they didn't do it. I don't know. A 4-door Mustang appeals to me.
If it were called, what were your names, Stefan? Not the Cougar. What if it was called the Cougar?
The Cougar, or yeah.
Would you still buy it? I mean, are you so enamored with the word Mustang? I know you're not, and I'm not trying to be a smart aleck to you, but is the world really going to say, "Ooh, if that only been called a Mustang, I'd have bought it"? I think it offends more people than it attracts. I guess.
All right, Adams, I'm going to ask you this. Doesn't this seem like an analogy to the M3? BMW M3 was always a coupe. And then they made it a sedan. And because it was a really fast sedan and you can get a manual, no one was really bothered by it. I have a two-door M3 and I bought and had for 3 years a four-door M3. It didn't bother me at all. I think it's like that. I liked it. I liked it was an M3, and I would like if it was a Mustang, if it's a sporty car with four doors, it wouldn't bother me.
Well, and that's an interesting view because you are more on the BMW side. Honestly, I still need a family tree drawn that includes that the M4 is a two-door and the M3 is a four-door. I'm telling you, that is the most confusing renaming of cars. I still have to sort of look at it on paper to figure out what I'm looking at. So to me, BMW had a little bit of a miscue on that, not challenging what you just said, but a miscue on the renaming. Just keep it where people can follow it. But
Well, all right. So I'm okay. Well, I'll ask you, Stefan. I'm okay with a four-door just because of the M3 analogy, but not an off-roader.
No, I don't like the 911 Safari. I don't like the Safari, the
Yeah.
Stirato. I just those cars don't. Yeah, sure. If you're racing the Baja or the Paris Dakar, yeah, I get it. But I listen to the intercooler and Rio lot. The people that drove the 911 Safari think it's fantastic for daily city driving. I don't like the jacked up looks of it. It doesn't appeal to me, the looks. This rendering of the four-door Mustang, it almost to me looks more like an Aston Martin as well. I like the looks of it. I would have it does pain me that a four-door Mustang never been done before, but I think there's somehow,
I'm listening. I'm waiting.
Somehow there's got to be a name. There's got to be a name in Ford history, but then you'd lose the cues of it. And I think it's that front end and those back rear haunches, I think, are what make this Ford. If Ford just came out with a four-door car that's sporty, people would be like, eh. I mean, because they'd have to reinvent the style. But here, the Mustang still looks great. And throwing two doors on it, I think, I don't know. It does bother me.
Let me ask you this.
I think it looks good, though. I love it.
He's troubled.
I'm troubled. I'm seriously troubled.
Troubled.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of troubled. Doesn't it look like someone photoshopped the front end of, the Mustang onto a Charger? It looks like a Dodge Charger. You look from the A-pillar back.
Oh, yeah, man, I'm with you.
It looks a little bit, that rear window is not quite right to me. But, this was, I can't remember if I got this as Car and Trend, or I think this is Car and Driver maybe did this rendering. I pulled it off the internet. This is a rendering. Ford did not show this. This is somebody's rendering what they think it's going to look like.
I'm sorry to say, I'm seeing a little bit when I look at the triple lights. I'm looking at a little bit of a Camaro look. I can't believe I just said that, looking at a Ford, but it's a little bit Camaro. Something about that whole tri-light zone to me does not like super well. And there's no way in heck that back window will roll down into that door. So they're going to.
This is a computer rendering. So this is not what Ford showed.
Yeah.
Which I'm surprised hasn't leaked yet. But
Steve-O's saying that, it looks like a Charger from the A-pillar back. Got it.
Yeah. You know what this is? The Charger is now out of production. And we know from a former guest that University of Alabama football players all drove Chargers. So this is trying to capture University of Alabama football player market.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, that was the marketing meeting.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for episode, I guess, 122 or 3 of Cars on Call. We'll come back when we have time again and when we feel like it. But this was fun, guys. Thanks.
Always it was a good time. Sorry, we have plenty to say, and I've missed it, but we've got busy lives, and we try to get a home run the first 2 years, and I've had several people say, "Hey, when's your next episode?" So we'll drop one, and but we'll try to drop them a little more frequently. And I got to finish up the Cobra series as well.
And on that cliffhanger.